15 movies, hundreds of millions of dollars lost, careers damaged, studios in full panic mode, critics sharpening their knives. Today, we're counting down 15 fantasy disasters from the 90s that became cult masterpieces. The films that bombed at the box office, got destroyed by reviews, and somehow became beloved cult classics that people defend with their lives. Let's dive in. Number 15, Waterworld, 1995. Kevin Costner made a post-apocalyptic movie where all the ice caps melted and Earth became an ocean planet. It cost $175 million, the most expensive film ever made at the time. The media called it Kevin's Gate and predicted total disaster before it even released. The production was cursed. Hurricane destroyed the sets. The floating atoll kept sinking. Costner and director Kevin Reynolds feuded so badly that Reynolds quit before finishing. Rewrites happened constantly. The budget spiraled out of control weekly. Critics destroyed it. Box office was labeled a failure despite actually breaking even domestically. But international audiences loved it. Home video made serious profit. A Universal Studios theme park show based on it ran for decades and became more popular than the movie. Waterworld's reputation has completely flipped. The world building is ambitious and creative. The action sequences hold up. Dennis Hopper chews scenery brilliantly as the villain. What seemed like hubris in 1995 now looks like underrated spectacle that deserved better. Number 14, The Shadow, 1994. Alec Baldwin starred as a 1930s pulp hero who could cloud men's minds and become invisible. Universal spent $40 million creating gorgeous Art Deco sets and period atmosphere. Then nobody showed up to theaters. The Shadow was too weird for mainstream audiences who wanted traditional superheroes. The tone mixed camp with noir in ways that confused viewers. It opened against The Mask and True Lies in the summer of 1994 and got crushed. Russell Mulcahy's visual direction was spectacular. The production design captured 1930s New York perfectly, but the story felt old-fashioned and the humor didn't land. Critics dismissed it as style over substance. Home video gave it a second life. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men became nostalgic for Gen X audiences. The film's noir aesthetic influenced later superhero movies that took darker tones seriously. The Shadow deserved better than quick theatrical dismissal. Number 13, The Fifth Element, 1997. Luc Besson made the most insane space opera ever. Bruce Willis as a cab driver saving the universe. Mila Jovovich as a supreme being who speaks gibberish. Chris Tucker as a screaming radio host. Gary Oldman with a plastic haircut as the villain. It was complete chaos. American critics hated it. The tone was all over the place. Comedy, action, opera, singing aliens, and philosophical nonsense crammed together. Chris Tucker's Ruby Rhod performance split audiences violently. People either loved the camp or despised it. The $90 million budget made modest returns domestically, but Europe went crazy for it. International box office was massive. Home video turned it into essential sci-fi viewing for a generation. Now, The Fifth Element is considered a classic. Jean-Paul Gaultier's costume design is iconic. Multipass entered pop culture. The film influenced Guardians of the Galaxy's colorful aesthetic. What seemed like a mess in 1997 became beloved for its fearless weirdness. Number 12, Hook, 1991. Steven Spielberg made a Peter Pan sequel where Robin Williams plays an adult Peter who forgot he was Pan and must return to Neverland to save his kids from Captain Hook. It should have been magical. Critics called it a sentimental mess. Dustin Hoffman felt wasted under Hook makeup. Julia Roberts' troubled production and Tinkerbell performance got mocked. The sets looked artificial. The story dragged. Spielberg himself later called it one of his weakest films. The $70 million budget made money but disappointed compared to expectations for a Spielberg film. Adults rejected it as too childish, but kids absolutely loved it. Home video made Hook a childhood staple throughout the 90s. Nostalgia completely rehabilitated Hook's reputation. The generation that grew up with it defends it fiercely. Bangarang became a rallying cry. Robin Williams' performance is now appreciated for its heart. What critics dismissed became a beloved comfort film for millions. Number 11. Dark City, 1998. Alex Proyas made a noir sci-fi masterpiece about a man who wakes up with no memory in a city where it's always night and reality keeps changing. It was visually stunning, philosophically deep, and nobody saw it. Dark City released just weeks before The Matrix. New Line Cinema forced Proyas to add opening narration that spoiled the major twist. Marketing gave away too much. The dark, weird tones scared away mainstream audiences. The $27 million budget barely broke even. Critics who saw it were split. But Roger Ebert championed it relentlessly, calling it one of the year's best films. The director's cut, released years later, removed the narration and vindicated Proyas' original vision. Dark City influenced The Matrix, Inception, and countless films about reality being fake. Streaming introduced it to new generations who recognized its brilliance. What seemed too weird in 1998 is now considered an underrated masterpiece that deserved The Matrix's success. Number 10. The Island of Dr. Moreau, 1996. This is one of the most legendary production disasters in Hollywood history. Director Richard Stanley got fired after just a few days. Marlon Brando showed up, refusing to learn lines, wearing a bucket on his head, and demanded a tiny person follow him around as his sidekick. Val Kilmer feuded with everyone on set and refused to cooperate. The script got rewritten constantly during shooting. The $40 million budget produced an incomprehensible mess that critics savaged and audiences avoided. The documentary Lost Soul about the chaotic production became more famous than the actual film. But Brando's insane performance and the behind-the-scenes chaos gave it so bad it's fascinating cult status. It's not good, but it's unforgettable. Number 9. Dragonheart, 1996. Dennis Quaid played a dragon-slaying knight who befriends the last dragon voiced by Sean Connery. Universal spent $57 million on CGI that looked dated the moment it premiered. The Dragon Draco was supposed to be cutting edge but felt cartoonish compared to Jurassic Park 3 years earlier. Critics dismissed it as a shallow kids movie with hammy acting. Box office returns were weak. But that emotional ending, where Draco sacrifices himself, made audiences cry. Kids loved it on home video. Sean Connery's voice performance elevated the material. The film spawned multiple direct-to-video sequels decades later. Dragonheart's charm came from its sincerity in an era of cynicism. It's cheesy, but genuinely heartfelt. Number 8. The City of Lost Children, 1995. French directors Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Marc Caro created a surrealist steampunk nightmare about a mad scientist who kidnaps children to steal their dreams. American audiences had absolutely no idea what to make of it. The visuals were stunning and disturbing. Dystopian industrial landscapes mixed with carnival grotesquerie. Ron Perlman played a carnival strongman searching for his kidnapped brother in a world that felt like a dark fairy tale designed by lunatics. Limited U.S. theatrical release meant almost nobody saw it. The narrative was confusing and deliberately weird, but art house theaters and midnight screenings built a devoted cult following. The film influenced Guillermo del Toro and Terry Gilliam's later work. Streaming rediscovery proved its genius. Number 7. The 13th Floor, 1999. A virtual reality noir mystery about a man who discovers his world might be a computer simulation released the exact same year as The Matrix. It never had a chance. The $16 million budget barely made $18 million back. Critics ignored it. Audiences chose The Matrix's action over the 13th floor's slow burn mystery. The twist ending was telegraphed too obviously. The execution felt cheap compared to the Wachowskis' vision. But the premise was solid. 1990s scientists create a simulation of 1930s Los Angeles and discover they're also in a simulation. The buried truth about layered realities deserved better. Streaming services introduced it to viewers who appreciated its ideas despite weak execution. Being overshadowed by The Matrix doomed it unfairly. Number 6. Spawn, 1997. Todd McFarlane's dark comic book anti-hero got a big screen adaptation with a $40 million budget and terrible CGI. The cape was supposed to be Spawn's living weapon, but looked like a PlayStation cutscene. Michael Jai White was wasted as Al Simmons with weak material. John Leguizamo's grotesque performance as the demon clown was the only memorable part. The film tried desperately to be edgy and dark for comic book fans, but felt sanitized for PG-13 rating. Box office was barely profitable. Critics destroyed it. Comic fans were disappointed it didn't capture the source material's horror, but the HBO animated series that followed was far superior. A reboot has been stuck in development hell for 20 years. Spawn represents peak 90s comic movie excess before studios figured out the formula. Number 5. Legend, 1995, re-release. Ridley Scott's 1985 fairy tale got a director's cut re-release in 1995 with the original Jerry Goldsmith score replacing Tangerine Dream's synth soundtrack. It still couldn't find mainstream audiences 10 years later. Tom Cruise as a forest boy protecting unicorns confused everyone who expected Top Gun action. Tim Curry's demonic darkness remained the only universally praised element with makeup that still looks incredible. The two different versions, theatrical and director's cut, created endless debates about which was better. European cut versus American cut arguments continue today. The re-release attempt failed commercially, but introduced the film to a new generation through rental stores. Home video finally cemented its cult status. Legend influenced modern fantasy aesthetics, despite being a beautiful financial failure twice. Number 4. The Postman, 1997. Kevin Costner directed himself in a 3-hour post-apocalyptic epic where a drifter pretends to be a mailman and accidentally inspires hope across a destroyed America. The $80 million budget returned only $18 million domestically. It was Costner's second massive post-apocalypse failure after Waterworld. Critics savaged it mercilessly. The film won Worst Picture at the Razzies. The runtime was bloated, and the sincere patriotic message felt tone-deaf in the cynical late 90s. But Costner genuinely believed in the story about hope and rebuilding civilization through something as simple as delivering mail. The earnestness that made audiences mock it also gave it a strange charm. It's too long, too preachy, and too self-serious. But it's a fascinating failure from a director who refused to compromise his vision despite everyone telling him it wouldn't work. Number 3. The Neverending Story 3. 1994. The Franchise Killer. A young Jack Black appears in one of his most embarrassing early roles. Warner Brothers released this with a $17 million budget and it bombed completely. The magic of the original 1984 film was gone. Cheap sets, terrible effects. A plot about bullies stealing the book and using it for selfish wishes. Direct-to-video quality released theatrically for some inexplicable reason. Fans of the original felt betrayed. This wasn't dark fantasy, it was silly kids' comedy that missed everything that made the first film special. The Neverending Story 3 effectively ended the beloved franchise. It's not a cult masterpiece, it's just bad. But it exists as a cautionary tale about milking franchises long past their expiration date and destroying childhood memories for profit. Mystery Men, 1999. A superhero comedy about incompetent heroes with useless powers premiered the same summer as The Matrix. Universal spent $68 million and got back only $33 million. The cast was stacked: Ben Stiller, Janine Garofalo, William H. Macy, Hank Azaria, Jeffrey Rush. The powers were deliberately stupid. A guy who gets angry, a guy who's invisible only when nobody's looking, a guy whose superpower is shoveling. Critics didn't know if it was satire or sincere. Audiences wanted actual superhero action. The tone was too weird and the humor too specific. But home video and cable replays built a devoted following. Mystery Men predicted the superhero satire genre before The Boys made it mainstream. Lines like, "We've got a blind date with Destiny, and it looks like she's ordered the lobster," became cult quotable moments. Wing Commander, 1999. The video game adaptation that killed video game movies for years. Chris Roberts directed his own game's film version with a $30 million budget. It made $11 million and destroyed any hope for the genre. Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard played space fighter pilots battling cat aliens called the Kilrathi. The special effects looked cheap even for $19.99. The story was incomprehensible to anyone who hadn't played the games. Fox dumped it in theaters with minimal marketing and let it die quickly. Critics destroyed it. Gamers were embarrassed. But the film had ambition. Roberts wanted to prove games could translate to cinema. He failed spectacularly. Wing Commander's disaster convinced Hollywood that game adaptations were box office poison. It took another decade before anyone tried again seriously. The cult following is small, but defends its earnest attempt to bring space combat to the big screen despite catastrophic execution. Which 90s disaster is your secret guilty pleasure? Which one did you rent from Blockbuster over and over despite knowing it was terrible? Drop your answer in the comments below. Hit subscribe for more forgotten film history and beautiful failures. And smash that like button if you still have any of these on VHS or DVD collecting dust in a closet somewhere.